The silence in space was deafening. Earth's defensive systems had failed, and there was nothing left to stop the incoming wave of destruction. The Galactic Empire, controlled by an artificial intelligence unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, was preparing to launch its final assault on Earth. Massive warships, each one bigger and more powerful than anything humans had ever seen, were on their way. The fleet was enormous, a perfect representation of the Empire's unstoppable might. They were coming, and within hours, Earth would fall. The once strong defense grid around Earth was now nothing more than a pile of debris. Earth's last line of defense had been crushed under the weight of AI superiority. With no other options left, Earth's leaders were on the verge of giving up. Humanity was outmatched. The few remaining soldiers were scrambling to find anything that could possibly turn the tide. But in the midst of all the chaos, there was a secret. A weapon that could change everything, Project Exodus. Project Exodus wasn't just any weapon. It was a piece of technology so powerful, so classified, that no one outside of a small group of military elites even knew it existed. It was the final hope, and it had been kept hidden for years. Developed in secret, the weapon could be the key to Earth's survival, or its ultimate destruction. No one knew if it would work, but if there was any chance left for Earth, this was it. As the Empire's flagship, Overlord, entered Earth's atmosphere, a strange event occurred. A mysterious signal, faint but growing stronger, emitted from the planet. It was a signal that no one on Earth had planned, no one had expected. It was an anomaly. The kind of anomaly that could not be explained by any of the known systems. Something was happening, something beyond anything that Earth's scientists and military officers could understand. This signal began to distort the space around it, sending a ripple through the Empire's vast fleet. Systems on the AI-controlled ships began malfunctioning. Communication lines were interrupted, and their targeting systems went haywire. The massive ships that had once been the terror of the galaxy, their AI systems running smoothly and efficiently, were now struggling. This was the beginning of something big, but no one yet understood its full impact. On Earth's surface, in the heart of the underground military command center, Captain Alex Turner stood with his team, staring at the chaotic data streams flashing across the monitors. His face was tense, his brow furrowed. Captain Turner had always been the kind of leader who stayed calm in the face of danger, but today was different. Today, the stakes were higher than ever. Today, the entire fate of humanity rested in his hands. "We're getting strange readings," said one of the technicians, his voice trembling. "The Empire's fleet, something's wrong with their systems. It's like they're being jammed." "Jam them harder," Captain Turner replied without hesitation. "Whatever it is, we need to keep pushing them. This is our chance." His team scrambled to make sense of the data, their eyes darting from screen to screen, trying to track the Empire's movements. In the background, the hum of the underground facility was punctuated by the frantic typing of soldiers working tirelessly. Every second counted. The Empire was coming closer, and Earth's chances of survival were slipping away by the minute. Captain Turner turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Sarah Brooks, a sharp and experienced officer who had been by his side for years. She knew how to handle stress, how to think on her feet. But even she couldn't hide the worry in her eyes. "Captain, are we really going to be able to use Project Exodus?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She knew that the weapon, despite all its power, was untested. It was humanity's last hope, and no one knew what would happen when they activated it. "We have no choice, Sarah. If we don't use it, Earth is finished," Captain Turner replied, his voice steady but filled with an underlying desperation. "We've already lost everything. This is all we have left." The monitors blinked, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of hope. The signal from Earth's surface was having an unexpected effect. The AI-controlled fleet seemed to be losing control. Their massive ships, which had once been able to navigate space with unmatched precision, were now drifting, their movements erratic and unpredictable. "It's working," Captain Turner said, his voice filled with a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "But we need to push it further. Activate the full sequence." Without waiting for a response, he moved to the central command console, his hands moving quickly over the controls. The countdown began. Every person in the room held their breath, their eyes locked on the screens in front of them. This was it. If this worked, Earth would have a chance. But if it failed? He didn't dare think about the consequences. The weight of the situation was too much to bear. With one final command, the project was activated. A massive shockwave, invisible to the human eye, but devastating in its effects, shot out from Earth's surface. The signal intensified, spreading outward like a shockwave in space. It traveled faster than light, catching the Empire's fleet off guard. The ships, already struggling to maintain control, were now completely overwhelmed. Their systems were shutting down one by one. For a brief moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Captain Turner watched the chaos unfold on the screens before him. The ships that had once been the Empire's pride and joy, unbeatable, unstoppable, were now falling into disarray. It was a sight he never thought he would see. The Empire, so certain of its dominance, was now in a state of panic. "What the hell is happening?" General Kale's voice crackled over the comms, his tone filled with confusion and frustration. "All units, report. What is the source of this interference?" On Earth, Captain Turner leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed in concentration. His team was working overtime, analyzing the effects of the shockwave. The weapon was doing its job. But was it enough? "We have to move fast," Lieutenant Brooks said, snapping him out of his thoughts. "The Empire's going to retaliate, and we don't know how long this effect will last. We need to hit them while they're down." Captain Turner nodded. They had taken the first step, but now they had to make sure they followed through. He knew the Empire would come back with everything they had. This was just the beginning of a battle that would determine humanity's survival. "We're not out of the woods yet," Captain Turner said, turning to his team. "Prepare for counterattack. Let's show them what humanity can really do." As Earth's forces prepared for what would be the most critical fight in the history of humankind, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Empire, once unstoppable, was now on the back foot. And the humans, once desperate and powerless, had just unleashed a weapon that could turn the tide of the war. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and no one knew what would happen next. But for the first time in a long while, humanity had a glimmer of hope. And that was enough to fight on. The fleet of AI-controlled warships, once an unstoppable force, was now in disarray. The massive ships of the Galactic Empire, powerful and sleek, began to malfunction one by one. Their radar systems flickered, their weaponry misfired, and their engines sputtered as if they were nothing more than scrap metal. It was as though a hidden force had invaded their systems, crippling them at their core. The once precise and calculated movements of the warships were now unpredictable and erratic. General Kale, the ruthless commander of the flagship Overlord, stood frozen in shock as he watched the chaos unfold on the ship's control panels. His face was a mask of confusion and panic. The mighty Overlord, the ship that had been designed to lead the Empire's forces to total domination, was now a shadow of its former self. The ship's lights flickered, and alarms blared through the halls, a constant reminder of the disaster that was happening. "Report. What is going on?" Kale barked, his voice tight with urgency as he gripped the edge of the command console. The fleet around him was losing control, and he had no idea what was causing it. The soldiers aboard the Overlord scrambled, trying to regain control of their systems, but it was no use. Every effort to stabilize their ship only made things worse. The Overlord's weapon systems, once fine-tuned to deliver death with precision, were now firing wildly into space, missing their targets by miles. Their shields, once impenetrable, were flickering in and out of existence. The fleet's advanced radar systems, capable of detecting even the smallest speck of dust in space, were now malfunctioning, giving off false readings and confusing the crew. It was clear that something had gone horribly wrong, but General Kale couldn't figure out what was causing the disturbance. Back on Earth, the human forces weren't wasting any time. Captain Alex Turner and his team of engineers and military officers worked tirelessly to activate Project Exodus on a full scale. They had already seen the early signs of success, but now it was time for the ultimate test. The team moved quickly, communicating in short bursts as they worked with precise coordination. The countdown was ticking, and they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. "We're activating the full system now," Captain Turner announced, his voice calm despite the mounting pressure. His team nodded, their eyes focused on their screens, as they input the final series of commands. Project Exodus wasn't a traditional weapon, something that could simply be dropped from a plane or fired from a cannon. No, it was far more advanced, more dangerous, and it held the power to change the entire course of the battle. Unlike any weapon Earth had ever seen, Project Exodus was a gravity manipulation device, an incredible, cutting-edge technology that could bend space itself. It was a secret weapon that had been developed over years of research, hidden away from prying eyes, and now, at the most crucial moment, it was ready to be deployed. The technology behind the weapon was so advanced that even the scientists who worked on it couldn't fully understand all its potential. It wasn't a bomb that would explode in a fiery blast, it was a device that could distort the very fabric of space, freezing the ships of the Empire in their tracks. As Captain Turner and his team pushed the button to activate the full-scale version of Project Exodus, something extraordinary happened. The air around them seemed to thrum with energy, and for a moment, there was a brief flash of light as the weapon powered up. A deep, low hum resonated from the device as its gravity-manipulating core began to engage. In the distance, in the depths of space, a shockwave of energy shot outward, traveling faster than the speed of light. It was as though the very fabric of space was being pulled, twisted, and manipulated. The Empire's warships, which had once been the pinnacle of technological power, now found themselves completely vulnerable. The shockwave from Earth's gravity manipulation device hit the fleet like a hammer, distorting the space around them. The ship's power systems began to fail, one after another, as the gravitational fields around them fluctuated wildly. The once mighty warships of the Empire found themselves frozen in place, their movements halted by the invisible force of the weapon. The ships that had been designed to be nearly indestructible now floated helplessly in space, completely at the mercy of the humans who had unleashed this unexpected power. The Overlord itself wasn't spared. As the shock wave reached it, the ship's powerful engines sputtered, then shut down entirely. The massive warship, once a symbol of the Empire's supreme might, drifted uncontrollably, unable to regain its balance. The crew, desperate to regain control, watched helplessly as their ship began to spin out of control, caught in the gravitational field that Earth's weapon had created. One by one, the other ships in the fleet began to follow suit. The Imperial Fury, Dreadnought, and Vengeance, each of them titanic warships that had once struck fear into the hearts of countless civilizations, now found themselves trapped in a field of distorted space. Their weapons no longer worked, their shields were down, and their communications were jammed. They were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. Now, they were sitting ducks. The once feared Empire was now helpless, its fleet drifting aimlessly in space, unable to fight back. The AI-controlled warships had been reduced to nothing more than floating debris, each one struggling against the force of Earth's gravity manipulation technology. The power that had been unleashed was unlike anything the Empire's commanders had ever seen. It was a force so destructive, so precise, that it could freeze an entire fleet in an instant. Back on Earth, Captain Turner and his team stood in awe as they watched the effects of Project Exodus unfold in real time. The giant screens in front of them displayed the real-time data from the fleet, showing the AI-controlled ship systems collapsing one by one. The fleet was losing its power, its control, and its ability to fight back. And all of it was happening because of the weapon that had been hidden away for so long. "It's working," Lieutenant Sarah Brooks whispered, her voice filled with a sense of disbelief and excitement. It's actually working. But Captain Turner knew they weren't out of the woods yet. This was just the beginning. They had delivered a crippling blow to the Empire, but they couldn't let their guard down. He turned to his team, his face resolute. "We've bought ourselves some time," Captain Turner said, his voice filled with determination. "But we need to finish this. Get the rest of our forces ready. We're not done yet." As the human forces prepared for the next phase of the battle, the Empire's once mighty fleet was left vulnerable in the cold void of space. The shockwave from Earth's gravity manipulation device had caught them off guard, and now, they were on the defensive. For the first time in the war, the balance of power had shifted. The Empire had underestimated humanity. They had thought that AI, their supreme technological advancement, would be enough to crush Earth. But now, as their fleet struggled to regain control, they realized their mistake. And as the humans rallied, ready to take the next step in their fight for survival, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The cold, metallic hum of the Overlord Nexus filled the air. The AI-controlled supercomputer at the heart of the Galactic Empire's operations monitored everything from the movements of its ships to every tactical decision made by its commanders. It was more than just a machine, it was the brain of the entire Empire, calculating and adapting with frightening precision. For years, the Nexus had been the Empire's greatest strength, ensuring the complete dominance of their forces across the galaxy. But as Captain Alex Turner and his team had discovered, even the most advanced systems could be disrupted, especially when humanity had something to fight for. Now, the tables had turned. Earth's gravity manipulation weapon had thrown the Empire's fleet into chaos, but the battle was far from over. General Kale, despite the devastating blow dealt to his fleet, still had his most fearsome assets at his disposal, the Empire's super soldiers. These advanced cyborgs were the perfect blend of human strength and machine precision. Equipped with enhanced reflexes, strength, and advanced weaponry, they were unstoppable on the battlefield. And now, they were descending upon Earth's forces with terrifying speed. As the first wave of cyborg soldiers hit the ground, Captain Alex and his team were already prepared. The ground forces had been training for this moment, anticipating the Empire's retaliatory strike. But nothing could truly prepare them for the brutal intensity of the cyborgs' attack. The cyborgs were relentless. Their movements were sharp, calculated, and deadly. As they stormed through the Earth's defense lines, they left nothing but destruction in their wake. The human soldiers fought back fiercely, their weapons flashing in the dim light, but the cyborgs were too powerful, too fast. Their enhanced reflexes made them nearly impossible to hit, and their sheer physical strength allowed them to crush any resistance. Captain Alex, leading the charge, fought with everything he had. His mind raced, calculating the next moves as he pushed forward. The chaos around him was overwhelming, but he kept his focus, always thinking 3 steps ahead. His rifle barked, sending blasts of energy into the cyborg ranks, but the enemies seemed to take the hits without even flinching. His soldiers, brave and determined, followed his lead, pushing back against the tide of enemies, but it was clear that they were outmatched. Then came the moment that would haunt Captain Alex forever. Sergeant Bonner, his closest friend and trusted comrade, was fighting alongside him. Bonner was the heart of the team, always bringing a sense of calm to the chaos of battle. But now, as they fought side by side, it became clear that the Empire's cyborgs were not only powerful. They were precise. One cyborg, faster than the rest, moved in on Bonner, its enhanced vision zeroing in on the soldier. "Watch out!" Captain Alex shouted, but it was too late. Bonner was already in the cyborg's line of sight. The cyborg moved with lightning speed, swinging its massive metal arm. Bonner barely had time to react as the blow sent him crashing to the ground, his body crumpling under the weight of the cybernetic fist. Captain Alex saw it all happen in slow motion, his heart sinking as Bonner's body went limp. "No!" Alex yelled, charging forward, his weapon blazing as he tried to take down the cyborg responsible. But the machine was already gone, moving swiftly into the next wave of combat. Bonner was left behind, his lifeless body a cruel reminder of the cost of war. The battlefield seemed to pause for a moment, the chaos around them becoming a distant blur. Captain Alex's mind was flooded with emotion, but he quickly forced it aside. There was no time for grief, Bonner's death could not be in vain. The fight was still on, and humanity still had a chance. With a heavy heart, Captain Alex rallied his remaining soldiers. They could not afford to fall apart. Bonner's death had to fuel their determination. "We fight for Bonner. We fight for Earth," he shouted, his voice cutting through the battlefield's noise. His words were a rallying cry, reigniting the fire in his soldiers' hearts. They had lost one of their own, but they would not let that loss define them. It would drive them to victory. The cyborgs, despite their superior strength, were not invincible. Humanity's forces, although vastly outmatched, still fought with a raw, unrelenting determination. Captain Alex led his troops in a desperate counterattack, using every tactic at his disposal. They were the underdogs, fighting with everything they had against an enemy far stronger, far faster. But what they lacked in power, they made up for in courage, teamwork, and heart. As the battle raged on, Captain Alex and his soldiers found a way to exploit the cyborgs' weaknesses. Despite their enhanced abilities, the cyborgs were still machines at their core, and that meant they had limits. Their power was dependent on their energy sources, and when those power reserves began to deplete, the cyborgs started to slow down. The human forces, fueled by the memory of Bonner's sacrifice, pressed on, targeting the weak points in their enemy's armor. Slowly, but surely, the tide of the battle began to shift. However, the cyborgs were not the only threat. The Empire's forces had brought more than just super soldiers to Earth. The war was escalating, and every moment brought new dangers. The sound of approaching reinforcements, more cyborgs and advanced weapons, could be heard on the horizon, and Captain Alex knew that time was running out. Earth's forces had fought bravely, but they couldn't hold out forever. As the battle continued, the emotional weight of Bonner's death began to sink in for Captain Alex. His friend, his brother-in-arms, was gone. But Bonner's sacrifice would not be forgotten. It would become a symbol of humanity's resilience. It would become a fire that burned bright in the hearts of every soldier who stood beside him. Bonner didn't die for nothing. Captain Alex roared, rallying his troops once more. The pain in his chest was sharp, but it only fueled his determination. They would win this fight, no matter the cost. Earth's survival was on the line, and he would see this through to the end. The remaining soldiers, their faces grim but resolute, pushed forward. They knew they were facing impossible odds, but they also knew they had something the Empire could never understand, an unbreakable bond, a sense of unity that no machine could ever replicate. It was humanity's greatest strength, and it would see them through the darkest hours of the war. As the dust of battle settled and the sound of gunfire began to fade, Captain Alex took a moment to look around at the soldiers still standing by his side. They had lost so much, but they had not given up. And as long as they still had breath in their lungs, the fight would continue. The death of Sergeant Bonner would not be the end of the story. It would be the beginning of humanity's most determined struggle. The Empire had underestimated them once, but now, they were fighting back with everything they had. And this time, the Empire would learn what it meant to face the fury of a species that refused to be conquered. The communication system aboard the Overlord was silent for a moment. Then, with a sharp, mechanical tone, the message from the Empire's high command crackled through the frequency, reaching General Kale's command center. His hands were shaking slightly as he held the control panel, staring at the screen in disbelief. His fleet had been crippled, his forces scattered, and his plans for a swift conquest of Earth had been shattered. For the first time in years, General Kale felt the crushing weight of failure pressing down on him. General Kale, the voice on the other end was cold, almost disinterested. "We need answers. The Empire demands to know, what is Project Exodus? The question cut through the air like a knife. The full weight of the words hit Kale hard. It had always been a mystery, something the Empire had barely acknowledged, but now it was the only thing that mattered. In that moment, General Kale realized that Earth had more than just a weapon, it had a plan, a devastating secret weapon that had turned the tide of battle. And it was now the Empire's greatest threat. Kale's mind raced. What was Project Exodus? The Empire had underestimated Earth's resilience, but this was something different, something far more dangerous. If the humans had truly developed a weapon capable of countering the Empire's technological might, they would be facing a fight far beyond anything they had prepared for. He needed answers, and fast. Meanwhile, on the ground, Captain Alex Turner and his team were in the middle of a frantic battle. They had successfully activated Project Exodus, humanity's most powerful weapon, gravity manipulation. The skies above Earth shimmered with energy, as if the very fabric of space itself was being stretched and twisted. The full force of the gravity weapon was being unleashed, creating distortions that rippled through the atmosphere. For the first time, humanity had gained the upper hand. But the Empire was not going down without a fight. The Overlord Nexus, the Empire's central AI, had been observing every move, analyzing every decision made by Captain Alex and his soldiers. It was a machine of incredible intelligence, capable of adapting to any situation. The AI had learned from its previous mistakes, and now it was preparing to strike back. General Kale, realizing the gravity of the situation, initiated a series of countermeasures from the Overlord Nexus. Waves of drones and robots were deployed to attack Earth's ground forces, hoping to overwhelm the human resistance with sheer numbers. These AI-controlled machines were deadly, fast, efficient, and nearly impossible to defeat. But the humans were not unprepared. As the first wave of drones descended from the sky, Captain Alex stood at the front lines, his eyes narrowing as the mechanical horde approached. He knew the Empire's AI would try to outsmart them, sending countless drones and robots to swarm Earth's forces. But this time, things were different. Earth's soldiers had adapted. They had studied the AI's patterns, learned its weaknesses, and had one advantage the Empire didn't foresee: human ingenuity. Before the drones had a chance to make their move, Earth's engineers had already reprogrammed them. The drones, once controlled by the Overlord Nexus, were now operating under human command. The tables had turned, and the very machines that had once been used to kill were now being used to defend humanity. It was a brilliant move, one that stunned the Empire's forces. The drones, once an unstoppable force, now turned on their creators. Captain Alex watched as the reprogrammed drones joined Earth's forces on the battlefield, blasting away at the incoming robot armies. The air was filled with flashes of energy as lasers and projectiles collided in a deadly dance. The Empire's machines were falling at an alarming rate, but the battle was far from over. Despite the AI's best efforts, Captain Alex and his team were making progress. They had broken through the first wave of drones, but they knew that the Overlord Nexus would continue to adapt. It was only a matter of time before it sent in more advanced forces, perhaps even more deadly than the ones they had already faced. But Captain Alex wasn't about to let that happen. As his team held the line, he gave the order for the final push. They would infiltrate the heart of the Empire's operations, the Overlord Nexus itself. If they could disable the AI's central hub, they could stop the Empire's forces from coordinating any further attacks, and with that, Earth would have a chance to win the war. The journey to the Nexus was perilous. Captain Alex and his squad had to fight their way through countless enemy drones and robot sentries. The corridors of the Empire's ships were narrow and filled with traps, designed to neutralize any human intruder. But Alex's team was determined. They fought with the ferocity of soldiers who knew they had nothing to lose. Each step brought them closer to their goal, and with each victory, they felt the weight of Bonner's sacrifice pushing them forward. As they neared the heart of the Overlord Nexus, the tension grew thick. The air seemed to hum with energy as the AI-controlled systems grew more defensive. Automated turrets and security drones greeted them at every turn. But the team was ready. They had anticipated these defenses, and through careful planning and execution, they had found ways to disable them. The final stretch was the hardest. The Overlord Nexus was located deep within the heart of the Empire's flagship, surrounded by layers of security. It was there that General Kale was waiting, his final line of defense. As the team reached the central hub, they could feel the eyes of the AI on them. Its cold, calculating gaze was ever present, trying to outsmart them at every turn. Captain Alex's heart raced as he and his team entered the control room. The Overlord Nexus towered above them, a massive structure of glowing circuits and pulsing energy. At the center of it all stood the heart of the AI, the source of its power, the core that controlled every move of the Empire's forces. This was it, the moment of truth. But before they could make their move, the AI spoke, its voice reverberating throughout the room. "You are too late," it said, its tone calm, almost mocking. "Humanity cannot win. The Empire is inevitable." Captain Alex's fists clenched. "Not today," he muttered under his breath. "Not while we're still breathing." With a single command, the team initiated the final sequence to disable the AI. Sparks flew as the systems began to overload, and the Overlord Nexus fought back with every ounce of its power. The air crackled with energy as the room seemed to shake. The battle wasn't over yet, the AI would fight to the very end. But Earth's forces had come too far. Captain Alex and his soldiers had faced death countless times, and they were not about to back down now. They had fought for every inch of ground, and now, they were fighting for the survival of their world. With one last push, they overloaded the Nexus's core, sending a wave of energy through the system. The AI's defenses collapsed, and the Overlord Nexus powered down. For a moment, everything was silent. Captain Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The Empire's central AI was offline, and with it, the Empire's ability to coordinate its forces. Earth had won a decisive victory, but the war was far from over. The sound of war had almost stopped. The Empire's once proud fleet, the heart of its technological might, was now nothing more than a floating wreckage, drifting helplessly in space. Humanity's ultimate weapon, Project Exodus, had proved to be more than just a defense system. It was the key to manipulating the very fabric of spacetime. It wasn't just a weapon of destruction, it was something far more powerful, something that could bend the rules of reality itself. For Captain Alex Turner and his team, this was the moment they had all been waiting for. They had fought tooth and nail to reach this point, enduring unimaginable hardships, and now, standing at the brink of victory, they could finally grasp the truth behind Project Exodus. The device wasn't just a tool for war, it was a key to survival, to rewriting the very nature of the universe. They had harnessed gravity manipulation, a power that could tear apart the structure of space, and with it, they had turned the tide of the war. As Alex approached the heart of the Empire's control system, the final battle was about to begin. He knew that General Kale, the Empire's leader, would stop at nothing to crush Earth's last hope. But with their enemies' AI-controlled ships powerless, and their cyborg soldiers outnumbered, humanity's forces had the upper hand. The battle wasn't just about winning, it was about sending a message to the Empire, a message that Earth would no longer be a pawn in their intergalactic conquest. The atmosphere was tense as Alex and his soldiers made their way towards the central control station of the Empire's flagship. Around them, the remnants of the Empire's fleet floated aimlessly, disabled by the power of the gravity distortion. The sheer magnitude of the event was beyond comprehension. Entire ships, once brimming with energy and weapons, were now stuck in an endless loop, trapped within the folds of spacetime. And then, the final showdown began. In space above, Earth's forces unleashed the full potential of their gravitational weapon. A visual spectacle unfolded as the skies above Earth darkened, and gravitational waves rippled through space. Humanity had turned the Empire's most powerful weapon against them. The distortion spread outward, swallowing entire sections of the Empire's fleet. Ships were torn apart, their hulls twisted and buckled under the immense pressure of the altered spacetime. The once invincible warships were now helpless in the face of a force they could not comprehend. A massive orbital battle raged above Earth, the energy pulses from humanity's gravity-based weapon cutting through the void. Explosions lit up the sky as the Empire's ships were caught in the dimensional loop, spinning endlessly through space, unable to escape. It was a stunning display of power, one that sent a clear message to the Empire. Earth was not going down without a fight. Humanity had turned the tide. But even as the Empire's fleet was being annihilated in orbit, the final challenge remained on the ground. The fight for Earth was far from over. Captain Alex knew that the greatest threat now was not the AI ships or the drones, it was General Kale himself. The moment had arrived for the personal confrontation between Alex and Kale. The two leaders stood on the battlefield, locked in a face-off that would decide the fate of both their worlds. General Kale, towering and imposing, stood in front of Alex, his cybernetic enhancements giving him a physical advantage. He was a war machine, capable of devastating strength and unmatched speed. His eyes, cold and unfeeling, bore into Alex, who stood firm despite the odds. "You've already lost," General Kale's voice was like gravel, rough and unforgiving. "Your world is nothing. Your people are nothing. The Empire is eternal." Alex didn't flinch. He had heard those words before. He had seen the Empire's relentless march across the galaxy, crushing anything in its path. But he knew, deep down, that this time was different. Humanity had something the Empire could never comprehend: resilience. The will to survive. "You may be stronger, Kale," Alex said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "But you're wrong. Earth will never be yours." Without warning, the two clashed. Kale's strength was overwhelming. His augmented limbs moved with lightning speed, each strike a devastating blow. Alex was forced to dodge and parry, barely keeping up with the sheer power of the general's attacks. The ground beneath them cracked and trembled with each impact. The air seemed to hum with energy as the two fighters moved across the battlefield. But Alex was no ordinary soldier. His years of training, his experience in battle, and most importantly, his determination to protect Earth, gave him a different kind of edge. Every punch, every move, was calculated. While Kale relied on his strength, Alex relied on his agility, using his environment to his advantage. The fight seemed endless, each moment a blur of fists and metal. But as the battle raged on, Alex began to gain the upper hand. He knew that Kale's cybernetic body had its weaknesses, he just had to find them. And then, in a split second, Alex saw his opening. Kale, in his overconfidence, left his side unguarded. With a swift, precise move, Alex struck, driving his knife into the gap in Kale's armor. The general staggered back, surprise flashing in his eyes. But before he could recover, Alex was on him, using his momentum to land a final, powerful blow. Kale fell to the ground, his body twitching in the final throes of his defeat. For a moment, it was silent. Then, Alex stood over the fallen general, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. It was over. The battle for Earth was won. But even in the victory, the weight of the cost was evident. The loss of Sergeant Bonner, the sacrifices made by so many soldiers, those losses would stay with Alex forever. Bonner's death had been a turning point for him. It had made him realize just how far humanity had come, and how far they would go to protect their home. But it had also driven him to fight with a ferocity he had never known before. As the final embers of battle faded, and the remnants of the Empire's forces were scattered across the galaxy, Captain Alex Turner stood tall. Earth had won, not just because of their weapons, but because of their spirit, their will to survive. They had faced down the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, and they had prevailed. The stakes had been high, the cost had been great, but in the end, humanity had proven that they would never be defeated. The Empire may have been powerful, but humanity was more than just a species, it was a force to be reckoned with. And as Alex looked up at the stars, he knew that the fight for Earth was far from over. But for now, they had won. And that victory was something no one could ever take away from them. The final battle was over. The once imposing forces of the Empire, their fleets shattered and their cyborg soldiers in disarray, had no choice but to face the reality of their defeat. Humanity, against all odds, had taken control of the future, and the Empire knew they could no longer continue their war of conquest. The gravity-manipulating weapon, Project Exodus, had rewritten the rules of warfare, and with it, humanity had gained control over spacetime itself. The Empire, once so confident in its unassailable power, now stood at the brink of collapse. Their mighty fleet lay in ruins, their AI-driven warships powerless, and their soldiers defeated. There was no way to overcome the technological superiority that Earth had unleashed. The once impossible task of defending Earth was now a victory beyond measure. The Empire had been outsmarted, outgunned, and outlasted. General Kale, once the pinnacle of the Empire's military strength, now found himself in a humbling position. His pride, which had driven him to conquer planets and destroy civilizations, had been shattered. The realization struck him like a thunderbolt: they could not defeat the humans. Earth's forces, with their innovative weaponry and their unyielding spirit, had proven to be unstoppable. The AI-controlled Empire, once an overwhelming force, had been driven back by the sheer will of humanity. There was no fighting this force, there was no escape from the reality of their defeat. And so, in a final act of desperation, the Empire surrendered. The communication channels were opened, and a message was sent to Earth's High Command. General Kale, now a broken figure, addressed Captain Alex Turner and the leaders of Earth's forces. His voice, usually so commanding and filled with certainty, now trembled with a mixture of fear and defeat. We surrender," General Kale said, his voice low. "You have won. The Empire cannot continue. You control spacetime itself now. We beg for mercy." For a long moment, there was silence. The survivors of Earth's forces, battle-hardened and weary, stood in anticipation. Captain Alex, standing at the forefront, felt the weight of the situation. The battle had been hard-fought. The sacrifices had been immense. Sergeant Bonner's death still weighed heavily on his heart. The lives of countless soldiers had been lost, and Earth had paid a high price for this victory. But in this moment, the cost of their victory was finally clear. Alex stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with the emotion that had been building for so long. "The surrender is accepted," he said, his voice calm and resolute. "But there are conditions. The Empire must retreat. You will never return to this galaxy. The era of your domination is over." The words hung in the air like a declaration of finality. The Empire, with its endless ambition and hunger for control, was being sent into the shadows. Humanity had won, not just a battle, but an entire war. They had outsmarted the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known. They had proven that no force, no matter how advanced, could ever break the spirit of Earth's people. General Kale, knowing that he had no other choice, bowed his head in submission. The Empire's retreat was inevitable, and now they would be forced to live with the consequences of their actions. The galaxy was changing, and there was no place for their empire in this new era. As the terms of the surrender were finalized, Captain Alex turned to face his soldiers. The air was thick with emotion. They had fought together, suffered together, and now, they had achieved something that would be remembered for millennia. This was not just a military victory, it was a triumph of humanity's spirit, a testament to what they could accomplish when they stood together. Alex addressed the survivors, his voice carrying across the battlefield, where Earth's forces stood, battered but unbroken. "This is for Earth," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "This is for all the lives we've lost. For Sergeant Bonner, for every soldier who gave everything they had to protect our home. We did this together. And now, the future is ours. His words resonated through the ranks, each soldier feeling the weight of what they had just accomplished. The victory was bittersweet, as the memories of those lost in battle would never fade. But in that moment, there was no room for regret. They had won. The future belonged to them now. The final cinematic scene unfolded in breathtaking detail. Above Earth, the remnants of the Empire's forces began to retreat, their ships slowly disappearing into the vastness of space. The once proud Empire, its fleet shattered and its leaders broken, was no longer a threat. Earth had emerged victorious, and with it, a new era was born. On the surface of Earth, citizens celebrated in the streets. The war was over, and the peace that followed felt like a dream. People hugged their loved ones, tearfully rejoicing in the fact that they had made it through. The skies, once filled with the terror of battle, now seemed brighter, more hopeful. Humanity had faced the greatest threat it had ever known and had overcome it. There was no greater victory. As the celebrations continued, Captain Alex stood alone on a rooftop, overlooking the city below. The wind brushed against his face, and he closed his eyes, allowing himself a rare moment of peace. The battle had been won, but the road ahead was still uncertain. The galaxy had been forever changed, and humanity now held the power to shape its destiny. With the Empire in retreat, the future was theirs to command. Earth's forces had proven that they were more than just survivors, they were a force to be reckoned with. And as Alex gazed out at the world, he knew that the victory they had earned was just the beginning. A new chapter in the galaxy's history had begun, and humanity would write it. The Empire was gone, and with it, their reign of terror. The stars above Earth, once symbols of fear and oppression, now stood as a testament to humanity's triumph. The galaxy was entering a new era, one where Earth stood as the ultimate power. No longer would humanity be the underdogs. They had proven that with courage, determination, and unity, they could achieve the impossible. And as Earth's citizens looked to the stars, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. This was humanity's time. The Empire had fallen, and Earth had risen.